Something is watching you from the dark. Two eyes, low to the ground, just past the edge of the firelight. They do not blink. They do not come closer. They simply wait, fixed on you, while the rest of the night moves around them. You should be afraid. Your ancestors knew exactly what those eyes belonged to. A predator that hunted in coordinated packs. An animal that could run down a deer, crush bone with its jaws, and outweigh a grown human. For most of the last 200,000 years, the creature staring at you from the dark was one of the most dangerous things on the landscape. So why didn't your ancestors drive it away? This is the strangest origin story in human history. Because the animal at the edge of that firelight did not stay a monster. It became the thing curled at the foot of your bed tonight. It became the only large carnivore on Earth that chose to live inside our homes, eat from our hands, and watch over our children while we slept. And here is the part almost nobody gets right. You did not create the dog. Not the way you think. Nobody sat down, captured a litter of wolf pups, and decided to invent man's best friend. The truth is far stranger, far slower, and far more beautiful than that. Let's reconstruct how it actually happened. Start with the wolf. Roughly 20,000 to 40,000 years ago, somewhere across the cold expanse of Ice Age Eurasia, your ancestors were not alone. They shared the land with gray wolves, and the two species wanted the same thing: meat. They hunted the same animals, they crossed the same valleys. For a long time, they were rivals. But your ancestors had something a wolf could never make on its own: fire. And around that fire, something else: waste, scraps of bone, marrow, hide. The leftovers of every kill, piling up at the edge of camp. To a starving wolf in the dead of winter, that pile of scraps was a miracle. Now, most wolves were far too afraid to come near. Humans were terrifying. The instinct to flee was carved deep into every nerve. But in any wolf population, there is variation. A few individuals are born slightly bolder, slightly calmer, a little less likely to panic and run. Scientists call this the flight distance, simply how close a wild animal will let a threat approach before it bolts. And the wolves with the shortest flight distance got the food. Think about what that means. The boldest, calmest wolves ate better. They survived the lean months. They raised more pups. And those pups inherited the same calm temperament. Generation after generation, the wolves hanging around human camps were not chosen by humans at all. They were selecting themselves by their own willingness to stay near the fire. This idea has a name. The biologist Raymond Coppinger called it self-domestication. The wolves that became dogs were not captured. They volunteered. But how do we know calmness alone could transform an animal this completely? For that, we have one of the most remarkable experiments ever run. In 1959, in Soviet Siberia, a geneticist named Dmitry Belyayev began breeding silver foxes. His rule was simple, almost too simple to believe. He selected for one single trait: tameness. In every generation, he allowed only the friendliest, least fearful foxes to breed. Nothing else. Not coat color, not ear shape, not body size, just friendliness. The results stunned the world. His colleague, Ludmila Trut, continued the work for decades, and within just a handful of generations, the foxes began to change in ways no one selected for. Their ears went floppy, their tails began to curl, their coats developed patches of white. Their skulls grew shorter, their snouts softer. They began to bark and whine. They wagged their tails when humans approached. Belyayev had selected for one thing: a gentle temperament, and a whole package of physical changes came tumbling along with it. Floppy ears, spotted coats, curled tails, the exact features that separate a dog from a wolf. Sound familiar? This is the secret. Tameness and those puppy-like features are biologically linked, riding together on the same developmental machinery. Select for the friendly mind, and you accidentally get the friendly face. Which means the wolves that chose to stay near human fires were not just becoming calmer. They were slowly, unintentionally, turning into something that looked like a dog. Nobody designed this. It built itself. But when did a wolf finally cross the line and become an animal we can truly call a dog? For that, we travel to a quiet site in Germany called Bonn Oberkassel. Around 14,000 years ago, two humans were buried there. And buried with them, deliberately, was a young dog. This is the oldest undisputed domestic dog we have ever found. But the detail that breaks your heart is what researchers discovered when they re-examined the bones. A veterinarian and archaeologist named Luke Janssens led a study published in 2018, and the teeth told a devastating story. This puppy had survived a severe case of canine distemper, a brutal, often fatal disease. A sick wild animal in the Ice Age dies fast. There is no margin for weakness, but this puppy lived for weeks through the illness, which means someone kept it warm, someone gave it water, someone cleaned it and held it and fed it through fevers and seizures, with no expectation that it would ever hunt or guard or repay the effort. They cared for it, simply because they loved it. 14,000 years ago, a human nursed a dying puppy through the night, and then they were buried together, so they would not be apart. That is not livestock. That is family. So who was right about how all this began? The leading geneticist studying this question today is Gregor Larson at the University of Oxford, who has spent years untangling dog DNA from sites across the world. And the picture his work reveals is messy and human. Domestication was not a single event in a single place. It happened gradually, possibly more than once, across thousands of years, as wolves and humans circled each other and slowly, cautiously became partners. Now here comes the twist that flips the entire story. We like to imagine ourselves as the clever ones, the humans who tamed the beast. But the biologist Brian Hare at Duke University proposed something he calls survival of the friendliest. His argument is that dogs did not win by being smarter or stronger than other wolves. They won by being kinder. The friendliest wolves outbred the fierce ones, not through strength, but through cooperation with us. And if friendliness was the winning strategy for them, what was it for us? Because here is the uncomfortable possibility. The dog may have domesticated you right back. A human with a dog could hunt better, sleep safer, and detect danger sooner. The partnership made both species more successful. You think you created the dog, but the dog quietly reshaped how your ancestors survived, hunted, and even how they slept at night. We did not tame each other by force. We tamed each other by trust. And that trust is not a story. It is chemistry, and you can feel it right now. In 2015, a Japanese researcher named Takefumi Kikusui published a study in the journal Science that revealed something almost unbelievable. When you and your dog look into each other's eyes, both of your brains release oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that floods a mother's brain when she gazes at her newborn baby, and it works in a loop. You look at your dog, your oxytocin rises, so you pet them, which raises their oxytocin, so they gaze back at you, which raises yours again. No other animal does this with us. Not horses, not cats, not even our closest ape relatives. Somewhere in those tens of thousands of years around the fire, dogs evolved to hijack the exact chemical pathway that bonds a parent to a child. They learned to love us in the language our own bodies already understood. So, think about what is really happening when your dog rests its head on your knee tonight. That is the end of a 20,000-year experiment that nobody planned. A chain of choices made by frightened wolves who decided the warmth was worth the risk, and by humans who decided a strange animal at the edge of the dark was worth feeding. You are the inheritor of that decision. Every dog alive today, every poodle, every shepherd, every mutt asleep on a couch, descends from those first bold wolves who crept toward a human fire and did not run. They bet their lives on us, and we kept the bargain for 20,000 years. So tonight, when your dog turns 3 times and settles down beside you, look at its eyes. Floppy-eared, soft-faced, watching you with a devotion no wild animal was ever supposed to feel. Something is still watching you from the dark, but it is not waiting to attack anymore. It is waiting to make sure you are safe.